You are watching and listening to the Two Chumps Football Podcast. I am your host, Chad Wilson. That is my co-host, Emil Calamino, and we are here counting it down. We're finally into the NFL playoffs. First round coming right at you. Wild card weekend is upon us. As we do that, we are closing down, getting near the end for college football. The much awaited, spoken about 12-team college football playoff is now down to 4, Emil, as we head into our finale in this 12-team play.
It's the end of the road. Isn't that a song, Boys to Men or something? I've come to the...
Yes, if you feel something funny there, it's that the field includes 2 Big Ten teams. It includes an independent, and then it includes a SEC team that was not in the SEC last year. It's a Big 12 team conference that people call weak, albeit Texas was and is the strongest of that former Big 12. So kudos to them for being there. But hey, in a year where...
Wait, before we talk football, we've got to handle some personal stuff here. What is the temperature in Miami today? Because I heard you got a little cold spell down there.
I mean, if a cold spell is 65 degrees, call it a cold spell. Anyone listening to us up in your neck of the woods is laughing while also crying.
Listen,
what I just said.
Cold up here. It's 20. The wind's blowing. Okay. I got a hoodie on. I got a thermal below it. Okay. I am freezing, but I'm going to tell you something I noticed in Miami. I was down there the year at the Super Bowl. It was an accident about 10 years ago. I forgot the Super Bowl was that week. Let's get
this guy forgot when the Super Bowl was?
Well, when I booked the trip, you know how you do it a couple of months in advance. And it was the Panthers Broncos Super Bowl. And I don't know if you remember.
I'm black. We don't plan trips.
I understand. You don't plan anything. You don't even plan dinner for this evening. It's just like, hey, call me. I've learned that. Okay, just call me. Like if you're walking out of your hotel.
We pop up and do things, man.
Just pop up, right. So the Panthers are playing the Broncos. Super Bowl Sunday comes, and it's like, I don't know, 64 degrees on South Beach. I'm walking around. I mean, I'm comfortable. I got shorts on. I got a polo shirt. I'm flip-flops or whatever I'm wearing, loafers. People are walking around Miami with like North Face jackets on. I mean, these people were acting.
Hey, look, similarly, I was in Boston last month, and man, it's what you said. And it's like 29, 30 degrees, and we're in the North End trying to get something to eat. We're in one of these restaurants where you got to wait outside. There's a line.
Sure.
A couple dudes come by in shorts, and Carmen and I are looking at each other like, they're definitely from here, but what's up?
Well, let's not attribute that. They're just not right.
Dude, that is shorts are the furthest thing from my mind in that kind of weather. But all
we
right.
got that out of the way. We're to the end of the season. You know what we're going to do in the next couple of weeks when we run out of college? We're going to go through and dig up our preseason and just revisit how silly or good we were in each conference.
Well, I do. Tell me how this works. You probably know the schedule. Is there going to be a week off before the championship game?
The championship game is on Monday, I believe. I want to say it's a Monday. So it's the 20th, I think. So you've got a 10-day.
Well, maybe we do that next week.
Yeah, because we only have, that's it. We're down to the final 4. This is blasphemy, but how are they feeling if Texas fails here? This could be the Southeast Conference was without a representative in last year's championship game. We had Michigan and Washington. Big Ten won. The Big Ten.
Technically 2 Big Ten teams.
Is the Big Ten the new sheriff in town?
It might be. And folks in the SEC better warm up to that idea because it's sure looking that way.
I'm going to tell you my theory since we have some little time today because we only have a couple games to pick. The SEC was very good at sort of paying people when you weren't supposed to. Not everybody, but some guys got a little spare change, and it worked out well for them because nothing is as important as football in the South. This new system, in a way, I think, hurt the SEC because, let's be honest, you can talk about all the old Southern money you want, there's much more old money in the Northeast and the West, and you got teams now like Ohio State fielding rosters where they basically shelled out $25 million this year.
I don't know if I would say that. I would say that payments coming into play now allows a kid who might have just gone to Alabama and not get paid. So what you're mentioning sounds to me like you're talking about the upper tiers, like the big money. That I don't think it's that, because that I don't think has changed at any of these places. I just think the ability for more kids to get money has maybe, for lack of a better term, robbed some of the SEC teams, because where a kid might have gone to an Alabama or a Georgia or an LSU in the past just to go, and they weren't going to get anything. They were just going to be there for the experience. I think now their ability to get some kind of money sends them up the road to Big Ten.
Yeah, and you're right. That's a good point. They're leaving programs where a kid could have stayed and maybe started his senior year, not going to get a whole ton of dough, and somebody comes along and says, hey, we'll give you some money more than them.
Yeah, and then I don't want to discount the Nick Saban effect in the SEC. He's out of there, so, there's going to be, this is going to sound maybe crazy, but a little bit of a pullback. There's not as much urgency, sense of flipping every stone, trying to compete with the monster that is Alabama. You might have a little bit of that. And I'm really scared to see what goes on with Alabama fans into this near future here. 4 losses in a season seems absolutely crazy for that fan base, given what's happened over the last 12 years at that program. If you get another 4-loss season in Alabama, I don't know what's going to happen there, but I've been forecasting this for the long.
Well, but I think you're also going to have a lot of trouble, and we're seeing that with our picks this year, bringing it back to what we're here for, right? We're seeing with our picks, you're going to have a real hard time finding consistency, I think, year over year, because you're not going to be able to look at a program or a team and say, oh, well, they've got this many guys coming back, because almost everybody is having major roster turnover. Now, for some schools, it might be 10. For others, it might be 20. But either way, you're taking a big chunk of your mature roster, turning it over, and then bringing in a freshman class. So I think it's going to be harder and harder to find that. Even Georgia this year. I mean, yeah, you could argue they were in the Final 8, but they took 3 losses. They had a couple other close calls. They were nowhere near the level they've been at. And I think part of that is you're just seeing the effects of this. I think you're going to get a lot more randomness. Let's put it that way.
Especially when you look at the quarterback spot. I mean, the 2 times, or at least one time that I've been really wrong in forecasting a team in my career, if we could call it that, is Florida State before Jameis Winston. I went up there, actually went to a camp there, watched them, and I was pretty good at going to these camps, leaving, and then having a pretty good idea of what the team was going to be like that year. And I just remember being like, I remember saying, Florida State's going to be a 7-5 football team.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about Jameis Winston. And
I actually remember our picks that summer that neither one of us were very high. And I still remember they opened, I think, with Pitt, I want to say, that year. And he just absolutely torched them.
Yeah.
It was a Labor Day game.
Yeah, had a crazy run in the game, threw the ball all around. And, you were like, man, we might have made a mistake right here. And then for those who wanted to forecast things this year, Cam Ward showing up to Miami was, a surprise for some people in terms of how well he ended up playing. You could look at him at Washington State and say he was a pretty good quarterback. But to say that he was going to be a Heisman Trophy candidate, I don't think even the most diehard Canes fan really had that in their mind.
No.
And this is going to happen more and more because quarterbacks are going to be flipping all over.
It's going to be interesting just to see where this whole thing goes as we play it out. I mean, at some point, I'm hoping legislation comes along, because I think that's going to be the only way to fix this. I think the NCAA is just throwing up their hands and said, keep sending the checks. We all have jobs. we're not going to try to we're not going to get sued. Their record in court isn't very good.
Oh no, they are the Cleveland Browns in that
They're the
courtroom.
Cleveland Browns in court. So I think unless Congress comes along and says we're going to package some rules around this, with Title IX and everything else, and kind of do a whole new package for the new world of college football, college basketball, just college sports in general, I think we're going to continue to see this evolve, and it's going to not go in a good direction.
By the way, your guy Malachi Nelson, I think, is on his third school.
He is now at UTEP.
Yep.
Yes, we got USC, we got Boise, we got UTEP, and I think this is his third year of eligibility. So 3 schools, 3 years.
USC, Boise, UTEP.
This will be his third year. He's on his third school. Again, we're kind of having fun here with it, but when you look at the NFL, you don't have this much player movement in the NFL. You don't. They have contracts.
Yeah.
Your 1-year guys, some of your guys, free agent, undrafted free agents, that kind of stuff. But I'm saying, on the core of your NFL roster, for all they talk about free agency, most contracts are 3 to 5 years. Even if I go 3 years before I cut a guy to get out of a contract, at least you got stability for what was a college career before.
Yeah, he's sliding down there, man. I'm UC San Diego next year,
He's on the move. He's like the kid that was it Gunner? Who was the quarterback Gunner Keel? Was that her name? I think he had 5 schools.
You had the other USC quarterback that moved all over the place. It went through West Virginia and
he was the right-handed quarterback. He had USC emblem tattooed on his calf, and he ended up at 5 different schools. So he better have a good tattoo artist that made that into something else, like a couple eyeballs or something.
Yeah, get something Asian or something.
Yeah, something.
Whatever over that. All right, we got to get into these college football picks. Like I said, we're down to the final 4, so that means 2 games. And we're going to pick them for you, folks. We've got opinions on it. Strong opinions, strong enough to make them picks. So we're giving you 2 picks here. Emil, let's start off with what we didn't do last week and how we've been this year.
We only made 1 pick, and then I had a carryover. When we did the show last week, because of what happened and transpired in that terrorist attack in New Orleans, they had moved the Notre Dame Georgia game, so we didn't have a result. I had Notre Dame +2 in that game. The Fighting Irish took care of business, right? 23-10.
They did.
I've never seen a team with a set of receivers that can't catch a football like Georgia.
For a school that's been really close to dominating in recruiting over the last 4 or 5 years, it was quite shocking to see what little they had at that position. Guys that couldn't catch, guys that couldn't stretch the field. Just no real dynamic playmakers there. That's an issue. That's an area I fully expect them to attack, both in the transfer portal and in the high school.
Already picked up the USC receiver, Branch.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it was an easy sell for them. Like, you come in right now, you're the guy. So that was probably easy. But he's going to need some friends with him where he's going to draw way too much coverage in the next season.
Well, the drop in that game, which helped me, obviously, was huge. It was such a momentum shift on that ball. They hit one there. With your backup quarterback, you've got to hit especially plays like that because the kid's going to need some help.
Yeah.
They had a 50 to 60 yard play there. And it wasn't even a contested catch.
Yeah.
You would have caught it. I would have caught it probably.
Not understanding that performance by Georgia, but best believe Kirby Smart will address that in the offseason. Looking forward to seeing.
Correct. So I got a win there, and then I dipped into the off-the-sheet sort of mode in the bowl game. Took Texas State against the Mean Green from North Texas, and I guess it was the Texas Bowl. I gave 13.5 points, and that's way too many. That game ended up a 2-point Texas State win. So I got
another bowl game that wasn't part of the playoff that came down to a final possession or went to overtime. Yeah. So many of them seem to do.
So I'm 20-32, not good. And you are slightly better. You had a loss. You dipped into the ACC, right? And the ACC was miserable.
Pathetic. That's as bad of a bowl season, I think, as I've ever seen. You gave me stats on, I think, the Pac-12 going 1-7
One
year.
year, the Pac-12 at 1-7, I remember.
I think this 2-11 by the ACC trumps that, especially when you look at how some of the losses went down. A good portion of them, I want to say 7, were double-digit losses in those games. So the ACC did not represent very well this
You
postseason.
had Va Tech in that game, and they were getting 9 points, and somehow lost by 14 to Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota. And by the way, that coach, was that the bowl that he took the dip of the mayo?
PJ Fleck?
Yeah, I think Fleck got. I think that was the Mayo Bowl. I think that's the game they literally dumped. I like Mayo, but not the thought they dumped a jar. He did it willingly too. They dumped a jar of mayo over his head. It was giving me the creeps thinking about how oily and greasy he must have felt.
I'm not a Mayo lover, so it was even worse for me. But yeah.
So anyway, you got a loss there. You're 23-29. I guess I'll go first because it's been that kind of season. I mean, I don't know what to say at this point other than let's start the game tomorrow night. We're taping this. It's Wednesday, so you're going to get this before the game tomorrow. We got Penn State, Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a 1.5-point favorite. I think this is going to be a very good game. Where I live up in the northeastern part of Pennsylvania, it's on fire here because they are the two largest fan bases, college football. Penn State and Notre Dame are huge here. There's, the bars will be full. I'm going to go away from the game. I'm going to run away from the game, and I'm going to take the under in this game. Under 44.5, because I think a couple things. You got two schools here that play good defense. Both are in the top 7 in the country. Matter of fact, 4 schools that are playing, all 4 are in the top 7 in scoring defense. This game feels like a game where both teams will try to establish the run, especially early, like a boxing match. I don't think anybody's going to want to make that big mistake, which usually lends itself to more conservative play calling. So you're probably going to get, I'm guessing, a good quarter and a half before you start to see footballs flying really all over the place. And that lends itself in this kind of spot to me to under 44.5.
I feel you on that one, Emil. These two teams really do mirror each other, okay? Inconsistent play at quarterback, the type that'll make you nervous. I'm trying to figure out who it is that I trust more out of these two quarterbacks. I think right now I'm leaning a little bit more to Riley Leonard. But both solid run games. Both are defensive teams. Listen, craziest is going to sound coming out of my mouth. Al Golden really has that defensive unit running well there for Notre Dame. And when we've got such a small margin here in terms of the point spread, I'm going to lean a little bit more to the side on that. I think just Notre Dame's playing slightly better defensively. I think we're getting the same thing from both of these teams offensively. I just like the kind of momentum that Notre Dame has right now. Penn State comes into this thing having faced SMU and Boise State, and they may have a little bit of a false sense of who they are. Yes, Notre Dame started off with Indiana, a team that, we could argue maybe didn't belong there, but they didn't just follow that up with a very physical game against some athletes in Georgia, and I think they just come in slightly more prepared in this game. So give me the Fighting Irish at -1.5 in this bitter 65-degree weather that they're going to be.
I think you're making what you have to do in this game. It's a gut pick. I mean, I think a real key in finding the winner of this game, and this is sometimes where it's, I'm looking for nuggets and I'm not seeing them.
Hey, sports fans, if you're looking to take your game day excitement to a whole new level, then you got to check out Bovada Sportsbook. Whether you're into football, basketball, it's baseball playoff times, pretty much any sport, Bovada has everything you need. Best odds, live betting, and fast, secure payouts. And here's the best part. When you sign up today, Bovada is giving you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's up to $250. That's free money to get you started just for joining the action. It's super easy to sign up, and they've got you covered with all the top games, player props, and more. Ready to bet, win, and repeat? Head over to Bovada and get in the game. Check out the link down in the description below, and let's go get those winners.
I'd really like to know how healthy Abdul Carter is for Penn State. I mean, he's dinged up. he's a difference maker. They've had some guys roll through there on the edges the last 5 years between Micah Parsons, Chop Robinson, and now Abdul Carter. And I think Carter's in that same mold. He's a game wrecker. And he's also the kind of guy, he's a freakish athlete that can give a Riley Leonard problems, because Leonard's game is really with his legs, not his arm. I feel better about making a pick on the game if I really knew that because I think a guy like him is the kind of athlete that can neutralize Leonard. I don't know how hurt he is. So you're going with the gut. I feel you there. It kind of is like Notre Dame's rolling right now. What is it, 11 in a row or something? 12 in a row?
Yeah, they've got this ship pointing in the right direction. So
yeah. So Chad's going Notre Dame -1.5. I'm going under 44.5 on the game. Second game, full disclosure, anybody who knows me, if it's not USC, I like Texas and Miami. I'm not an Ohio State guy. I would love to be able to confidently grab the Longhorns in this game, but I can't. There's nothing I've seen in big games this year from Texas that tells me they're going to win this game. And if I don't think they can win, I'm not banking on them covering 6 points. I look at the games against Georgia, especially the second game that they lost in overtime. They had no business losing that game. Georgia willed themselves to winning that game. I look at the games that they've played in this playoff. Total domination of Clemson. It's 31-7. You turn around, you go get a drink if you're at a party, and next thing you know, it's 31-24. And you need them to score to cover the line. And then last week, let's be honest. Let's say what it was. They pretty much got lucky. It was almost like the Arizona State defensive coordinator on that 4th and 13 did an F it. He just said, I'm going to send everybody F it. And I just hope we get to the quarterback first. Yeah. And they hit that touchdown, tied the game, and then to their credit, won. I don't see that this week. I think they're going to have that one quarter that Texas seems to have where they lose focus. And if they lose focus in this game, they'll be down 17 points. Because Ohio State's playing that good right now. The Michigan loss was a gift. It focused that team. So give me Ohio State -6.
Apparently it was, Emil. So Emil's taking Ohio State -6 over Texas in this game. I'm going to have to agree with you here, Emil. I've been concerned for quite some time about Texas and their inability to play a complete football game, their inability to play 4 quarters of football. What does scare me in taking Ohio State is finally Texas shows up as an underdog and not a field goal underdog, a significant underdog. And so if there was anything that could make you change some of your character, fix your flaws, or, change up some bad habits, it is being disrespected, which I'm sure Texas feels like here, almost a touchdown underdog to this Ohio State football team. But the truth of the matter is that Ohio State comes into this thing extremely hungry. They have looked the part in the 2 football games that they have played thus far in this postseason. They look like a team ready to be crowned national champions. Now, we could say, well, it was Michigan or whatever the case may be, or maybe they were just trying to float along, and now they're in the postseason and they could turn things up. We've seen that in other sports. We've seen that at the NFL level where teams coast through the regular season and then they turn on all the juice in the postseason. So maybe that's what we have here with Ohio State. Whether that's what we have or not, I just really like Ohio State in the way that they're playing. I know my core feeling about football is that it rewards people who have something to prove, and it just looks like Ohio State really has something to prove here, and they're out to do it. This is going to be a really good football game. I just think in the end, though, I feel comfortable laying the 6 points with Ohio State. Are they going to run off and blow Texas out like Oregon? Maybe. We'll have to see. But I just think at the end of the day, they might just be double digits better than Texas.
It terrifies me with trying to take Texas in this game. If I thought it was an effort thing or schematics, which some of it is with being their problem, I'd say, okay, they can fix some of that. I'll be honest, what terrifies me with Texas is I don't love the quarterback. I don't love the decisions he makes. He seems, for a guy who's played a lot of football at this point, to not have great pocket awareness. it's almost like the clock in his head doesn't work. Like I've seen him take sacks in these games.
Mhm.
Where you're like, come on, dude, you have to know the ball's got to come out. You know,
Right.
what I mean? So I just don't see that.
And it's troublesome for me as well, watching them. Like, Quinn Ewers, what are you doing? And we haven't seen Arch Manning. Maybe you're holding him till this, which would be odd, not the type of thing that you'd want to do. But maybe he's an X factor in this game, but I doubt it. I just like the way Ohio State looks right now. We both agree on that. We're both going to take Ohio State -6 over Texas.
And then we roll over to the NFL, and some things, all good things must end, right?
You were talking about chilly temperatures earlier.
My partner here was on such a roll. I mean, he went into last week 70-some%. And I mean, it's been, you've had it, even with this, you've had a season for the ages, but you threw out a donut hole last week, 0-3. He drops his record, even with 0-3. He's 35-19. That's 64%. Your 3 losses, Commanders, really, you weren't ever going to win that game. You were given 5. The Packers, I don't know what they did. I mean, they just went out.
I feel like the same thing happened there. I wasn't ever going to win that game.
No, and once they decided that they were going to be cautious with Love, which was probably the wise thing to do, right? That they were never covering that game. And then finally, you had the 49ers, and Vegas obviously knew something because they just went out there as 4.5-point underdogs. That was one of those lines where it was too good to be true, and it wasn't true. I mean, it
was dipping tough for a while, and then we got into that second half, and all the wheels fell off. I mean, Emil, I don't know. What do you do with Brock Purdy? What do you pay Brock Purdy? Or do you even pay him? I probably let that guy ride. I actually think they may end up in a situation where they do Brock Purdy like the Redskins did Kirk Cousins.
They may tag him a year. I mean, if I don't know I don't know enough about the 49ers cap situation because you have to really study a team. If they can, probably what they'll do is tag him a year, pay him for a year, go and draft or sign or whatever their plan is, and then say, listen, we're not long-term in this guy because I'll be honest, no disrespect to him. I think he was a product of the roster that was put around him. And that's not even a bad thing. I think that's most quarterbacks between, say, 6 and 20 in the NFL. I think there's 4 or 5 guys that elevate the rest of a team. And I think that everybody else, what people forget is, why does Jalen Hurts look better this year? Because last year he didn't look too good. Saquon Barkley, okay? That changed everything.
We do have to allow for the fact that Brandon Ayuk got injured, and
of course,
and
that is my point, though.
And he lost Christian McCaffrey.
Brock Purdy is never going to elevate a team. If you put the talent around him, that's fine. And the problem becomes he's due to make $40 to $50 million a year. If you're paying your quarterback that, you can't have 2 really good receivers, an all-pro tight end, an all-pro running back, an all-pro left tackle. All that was possible because they weren't paying him anything.
Based on what you know about him and quarterback salaries, what would you pay Brock Purdy?
It's hard, right? Because we laugh. Like, okay, what if I throw out a number? I say, well, I'd give him the Daniel Jones contract, 4 years and $160 million. $40 million is still a big chunk of your cap, sure. It's not Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes money, but I mean, would you really, seeing what Sam Darnold did this year with the right coaching, seeing what Baker Mayfield has done to resurrect his career with Tampa, would you really pay Brock Purdy $40 million a year when you know there's probably a guy that we're not thinking about right now that's a young guy that's going to be available, that with the right coaching of a Kyle Shanahan and the right system, probably you could pay a fraction of that and get similar results?
These are true things that you're saying. I'm struggling to think of a number for him, which I think the Niners are probably struggling with that.
Would my team trade him Trey Lance back?
Trey Lance is not for that system, friend, and I think that's where people underestimate Brock Purdy. Now we're talking like, he really fell back to the pack this year, which he did. I just think that, yes, you spoke of having these weapons around him, but he's really in a way, uniquely qualified to manage all that within Kyle Shanahan's system. He's not so talented that he's going to try to operate outside of that system and do something dynamic. He really is kind of fit for what it is Kyle Shanahan wants.
Well, that's part of the problem I've seen with him, besides the injuries, even toward the end of last year. He started to try to make throws that weren't throws he should be making, almost as if he started to think he should operate outside the system.
Yes, and I did see that as well. A little bit too much running around and things of that nature. I wasn't sure if that was a function of Brandon Ayuk not being there and not, maybe seeing some different coverages because McCaffrey was out of the lineup. I think as a 49er, if I was a 49er exec or whoever, I would need another year. I need another look at it. And so I think that's probably what's happening.
I think the quarterback play in the NFL is really bad, generally speaking. And what I mean by that is if you really look...
It's funny because they've never been paid any more than what they're getting paid right now.
Because the game is so dependent on them. It's kind of a paradox, right? They've moved the rules so far to the passing game that without big numbers from your passing game, i.e. your quarterback, you almost can't win, right? So they've done that and kind of distorted the rules, kind of like when they were curving the SAT tests because the scores were too low. So they just fixed it in the American way. Well, we'll just put a curve on it so we can get. So, I mean, it's kind of what's happened here in that if you take the quarterback play we watch every Sunday, dial back the rules even 20 years, early 2000s, when Peyton Manning was frustrated by the Patriots defense that beat the hell out of Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison, right? I'm not sure like some of these guys would really struggle. I mean, you're talking about a league with wide open passing rules when we see bad quarterback play every week.
Yeah, I can't disagree. They need to put a ceiling on these salaries, and so I don't know where it's going to stop.
I think what they're going to have to do is come up with a percentage, the Players Association, that your quarterback's cap hit can never.
Yeah, I think any one player should make a certain amount more in the cap, whether you make that 15 or 20% or whatever the case may be. Maybe 15 would be too sharp unless you were going to drastically increase the cap because you got a number of quarterbacks now that are at 20 and 21% of the cap right now. But something's going to have to be done there. Or, maybe they take a look, Emil, at what's happened here with two of the major teams in these playoffs right now. The Ravens and the Eagles are sitting there with the two top rushing attacks in the league. One guy, got 2,000 yards. The other guy came pretty close. And maybe we just try to mimic success there and not put it on.
Well, I've said that, and I was talking to someone at the gym the other day, a guy who likes ball, and we were talking. I said, listen, he's an Eagles fan. I said, the Eagles did what was smart in my mind, because if you really think about all pro sports, especially at the professional level, there are ebbs and flows, right? When somebody does something different and it works, slowly everybody copies it. So you can go to baseball, right? For a while, the whole Moneyball thing worked because the A's had figured out 20 years ago that, hey, we don't have a big budget and we're competing with the Yankees. Mm-hmm. So then along came all the analytics and people started to catch up because it's like, okay, that kind of makes sense what they're doing in some ways, right? Mm-hmm. I think you're going to see that in the NFL because teams right now build defenses around passing rules. So if you go out, you have smallish linebackers on most teams, a lot of hybrid players. Everybody's passing the ball.
Yeah.
So if you turn around and say, listen, we're going to play hellish defense, we're going to get a big, massive offensive line, and we're going to run the ball. And knowing that you can't adjust your roster. If you build a roster for the other 27 teams, it doesn't work against my team.
No, you don't have LaVon Kirkland and your linebacking core anymore. So I get it. I understand it.
And I think college football, I pointed that stat out. We love to talk about offense. Who scored 70 against some division FCS team in September? Oh, Mississippi scored 77. Who's still playing? Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas. Go look at the top 10 scoring defenses. Those four are all in the top 7.
Do you remember those 70 to 77-point games Ole Miss pulled off earlier this season?
But that excites the novice, or it excites the 30-year-old talking head on ESPN that has, no point of reference. They haven't been around long enough to understand that that's not a big deal. Going and scoring 70 points. I mean, we remember when Barry Switzer was running the wishbone at Oklahoma, scoring 70 points in Big 8 games. Okay.
He would definitely do that. Or invite Bucknell into town and hang 77 on him.
So anyway,
doesn't really matter in September.
We got through your bad picks last week. My picks were almost as bad. I was 1-2. I'm sitting at 27-26 with a push for the year. I took a win with the Chargers. That was the only place I got it right. I don't know what the Miami Dolphins were doing. I guess they want to get invited to Aaron Rodgers' retirement party because they certainly sent him out in fine fashion.
Left Devontae open for him to get a final TD pass into him.
Yeah, and then finally the Bucs. Again, there was a team that went into the game, no idea. I mean, the Falcons were playing the Panthers. The Bucs win and they're in, lose and the Falcons were win. The Bucs are out of the playoffs. You figure that's a focused, motivated team against the garbage Saints team, and they were in a nip and tuck 1-point game till late in the fourth quarter. They finally won by 8. So that was a loser for me. So why don't we start the wild card weekend? You go first. You get this bad taste out of your mouth.
All right. Well, I'm going to start this one off with the AFC, the LA Chargers, the Jim Harbaugh coached LA Chargers are storming into the playoffs. We knew they would be there this year, but they're putting him in the unenviable position of being favorites on the road in his first playoff game back. And I just don't think that's a situation that the Chargers belong in right now. Yes, Houston has been underwhelming. And I was not high on Houston coming into the season. Didn't think Houston would miss the playoffs, but I just think people needed to pump their brakes on what the Houston Texans were going to be coming into the season. And I'm proved right. Now that we're here, though, I just don't think it has been that. It hasn't been to the point where I think you make the Texans underdogs in this game. I would have loved the Chargers if they were perhaps +3 or so in this game. But to have Houston, who got playoff experience last year, so we can't drop that on them, still has a solid quarterback and some playmakers on the offensive side of the ball and can jump up and play some solid defense, making them home underdogs, I just don't think is the way to go here. I'm going to back Houston. C.J. Stroud and DeMeco Ryans and his defensive unit has turned in some gems at certain points in the year. I would have loved to have seen more consistency there, but in this first playoff game in the postseason, I think Houston could jump up and have a pretty big game here. And if you force the Chargers to be a little bit one-dimensional here, I know everyone loves Justin Herbert, but they just don't survive that. I mean, you can call it the system, you could call it Harbaugh football, whatever the case may be. You turn them into a one-dimensional football team, and it doesn't just work out the way that you want. Don't like the Chargers as road favorites here, so give me the Houston Texans in this wild card weekend as home underdogs +2.5. Hey, Pittsburgh crawled their way into the playoffs. They were looking like a team that could compete for an AFC North crown. They looked like they were going to be, they were actually in the running for a 1 seed in this thing, and they ended up not winning the AFC North, not being anywhere close to a 1 seed, and now they're a wild card football team. Whatever the case may be, that has given people cause to want to take a dump on the Pittsburgh Steelers, including Las Vegas, that has smacked them in the face here with being a 9.5-point underdog. Hey, folks, sometimes you can't take what has happened towards the end of the season and run with it. Sometimes you got to run in the opposite direction. I'm going to do that here. Now, I think ultimately Baltimore ends up winning this game, but it's not past Baltimore to totally fumble here and lose this football game. They've had nothing but heartache and disappointment in their playoff runs, so I wouldn't be surprised if this thing ended up being nip and tuck. It is a division opponent that you're facing for the third time. And, oh, by the way, Baltimore did win the last meeting. They're going to be looking to do the same things, and I think Pittsburgh's going to be ready for it. That's going to keep this a close game. I think we're going to have a slugfest here that Baltimore ends up winning by 3 to 4 points. I don't like them as 9.5-point favorites in this game. Finally, we've got the Philadelphia Eagles. Emil and I have not been all that high on Coach Nick Sirianni this year. Whether we've been high on him or not, the Philadelphia Eagles are here, and they are our number 2 seed in this playoff. They're a good football team, and they've earned their right here. And they've got playmakers. You've got Jalen Hurts. You've got Saquon Barkley, who could have most likely broken the all-time single-season rushing record. You do have A.J. Brown. You have Devontae Smith. You have these guys out here that can make these plays. Oh, and by the way, your defense has been stepping up and making some plays in, towards the end of this season. So all of the units are coming together. It's funny, Emil. All of these things have been coming together and looking well, and we have heard less from Nick Sirianni. Let's just try and keep it that way. If you will remember, these two teams kicked off the season this year down in Brazil wearing gangrene amongst there.
Yes.
And Brazil, everyone was worried about that. And Philadelphia handled this meeting. That was at the most neutral of neutral sites.
Yes.
Now we've got this game at home with, I think, a more healthy Philadelphia football team. I thought for sure this game would be around 7. I think it's a prize for us, or at least for Philadelphia backers at -4.5. So I've got to back the number 2 seed at less than a 5-point favorite here and take the Eagles -4.5 versus Green Bay.
So my friends on the Houston Texans at home getting 2.5 against the Chargers. He's got the Pittsburgh Steelers +9.5 on the road against their hated rivals, the Ravens. And the Eagles in the Gangrene Bowl, part 2, -4.5 over the Packers. Well, I've got the other 3 games on this slate, so you're going to get them.
By the way, what's more dangerous, Philadelphia or Brazil, where these guys played?
Yeah, if you're a Packer fan, Philadelphia. This week, I'm going to start off with the team that you and I both picked to win the Super Bowl in the preseason. They kind of took last week off. They didn't they did. They started Mitch Trubisky. And they took a close loss against the Patriots. And the Broncos went out and dusted a Chiefs team that almost played their practice squad. I mean, literally, they beat them 38-0. I think this is not a great spot for Denver. They come off last week, even though they know deep down they played the Chiefs practice squad. They saw Kansas City Chiefs helmets running around out there and jerseys and everything else. And they think they just beat the Super Bowl champs 38-0. And they're going on the road. First taste of playoff football from a lot of this team. And they're going to a place that's not a fun place to play, a team that's been here year in, year out since Josh Allen arrived. And the line is 8.5. It begs you to take a very hot Bronco team here. And I'm not doing it. I'm not falling for it. I'm taking the Bills. I think the Bills are just a better team here. I think the Broncos will have some early success. Eventually, the wheels fall off. And I think this game ends up like 34-20, 34-17. Buffalo pulls away in the second half. And so I'm all Bills. Second game, this is a tough game. I think there's going to be a ton of points scored in the game. But here's the thing. As good of a year as Baker Mayfield has had, and he has had a great year, there's something about Daniels. He just has that it. And I think if this game is close, which I expect it to be, he's going to do something to win it, and I'm getting 3 points with the Commanders. I don't like the Buccaneers that I saw last week in what was essentially a playoff game. They go into a game, they have to win. So when the game starts, they have no idea Atlanta's going to lose in overtime to the Panthers. They go out and they play with their food, and they almost could have gotten themselves bounced in the playoffs. I think Washington comes in here confident. They played Mariota in the second half in a game in Dallas that they had no business winning, but they did. They made the plays in a game where they were trying to rest some guys here and there. It took their star quarterback out. I think they come in here with a lot of confidence. They have a coach that is confident, and I like the Commanders for the outright, obviously. So give me them +3. And then finally, I don't think they're doing the Minnesota Vikings any favors here, making them a road favorite. They had a big Sunday night game with Detroit, division title on the line, number 1 seed and everything, and they got their doors blown off. I mean, they got beat 31-9. They had a long winning streak, I think 8-9 in a row going in. They lose. Now they got to pick up the pieces, go back on the road, play a Rams team that literally rested their whole team last week. I mean, the guys that mattered. They rested both their star receivers, Matt Stafford, and still found themselves on the 9-yard line of Seattle with a minute left, down by 4 or whatever it was, chance to win the game. And they didn't score, and they lost. But that shows me something. I mean, the Rams being able to play that game and play that well, they were 7-point underdogs because Vegas knew who wasn't playing. I think they get it done here. Chad knows I'm a big Sean McVay fan. I think he's a great coach. He's still not even 40 years old, which is hard to believe.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I know it's a rematch game. They beat the Vikings earlier this year, which automatically gives me pause. But I think the Rams can be a dangerous team. They got a quarterback that is a Super Bowl champion. So give me the Rams plus 1.5.
Summarizing things here, Emil likes the Buffalo Bills at home. This is both of our Super Bowl winning pick here. So he's backing them then as he is now and taking them as 8.5-point favorites over the red-hot Denver Broncos. He is taking the Commanders as underdogs in their road game. They're going down to Tampa. Takes them as +3 underdogs versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then he likes the Rams as home underdogs against the Minnesota Vikings. The 14-3 Minnesota Vikings, I do want to add. But
yes.
Abel, before we go here, what quarterback matchup this weekend are you most excited to see? I have one in my head here.
Let me just think here. Well, I'll be honest, and for probably reasons different than yours.
Let's see if we're really alike.
I'm interested to see the Eagles-Packers game because Hurts is coming off an injury with the concussion. I want to see how he reacts to that. And I want to see Jordan Love, after what he did to my Cowboys in the playoffs last year, I want to see how he handles Philadelphia. Because one thing I can promise you, the fans in Philadelphia are not as polite as the fans in Dallas.
Oh, no doubt about that. That is well known. I'm excited to see Washington and Tampa Bay. Now, I want to see Jaden Daniels and Baker Mayfield. I think there's going to be a lot of exciting things going on there. One way or another, we might get a wild playoff game where there's interceptions, or we might get some extreme playmaking. I think it's going to be more of the latter out of both of these guys. Both of these guys are dynamic, and I'm really happy for Baker Mayfield finding his way in his career and just really being a model for those watching that, hey, sometimes your career, you go to the wrong place, and if you stick with it and you keep a positive belief in yourself, you can overcome things. We've seen that same thing with Sam Darnold. Makes you want to root for a guy like that, and then also Geno Smith in Seattle. But happy to see Baker Mayfield there, but he's also still a very exciting player. So I'm looking forward to seeing those two guys do it.
That was almost one of my picks. I think there'll be a ton of points in that game.
I think so. I think so as well, though both teams are capable of playing defense, more so Tampa. I just think the quarterbacks really dominate that matchup, and I think we're going to
get the wide receivers. I mean, there's some nightmare matchups with the wide receivers in that game. That should be a fun game. And listen, I'm curious to see how Bo Nix handles his first playoff game. I mean, he's had a better than expected rookie season.
No question. It's going to be icy there. It's good to see these guys that we thought would be the cream of the draft crop actually turn out to be that. Both of these guys that we thought would be the better of the best of the rookie quarterback class are both in the playoffs. We felt uneven about Caleb, and I'm probably being nice about our assessment there. We'll revisit that at some point later on. But we both felt like Jaden Daniels would be the cream of the crop in terms of this first year as at the quarterback position for guys that were drafted. And I felt solid about Bo Nix. I don't quite remember how you felt there, but
you liked him a lot. I mean, actually, you liked him going to see with Sean Payton, going to play for him. I'll tell you something. Last year, only because following Williams, because of being a USC fan, it makes me wonder how much influence talking heads in the media really have over NFL teams. Because I think to some extent, Williams going number one was almost part of the hype train.
Oh, yes, and we're going to see that again this year. Please believe me. We're going to see that again this year. And that's not to disparage anyone that's coming out. I just don't think it serves them well in the long run. Money-wise, yeah, you're going to end up being a top pick. You'll have all the money that you want. But at a certain point, I just feel like you've got enough money, which sounds like that's like almost cursing at someone in this country. And then you want to leave a legacy. You want to be able to say, hey, I won Super Bowls. I had a playoff. I hit the playoffs. I was at a Hall of Fame type career. And sometimes going to that number one team that's picking, who's probably always in that position, is not the best thing for you.
You know, I got caught flipping channels last week during the holidays, and I came across some Caleb Williams highlights from his Heisman Trophy year, first year. And, you know, you're watching them, and when the play works out at the end, you think to yourself, now that you have the hindsight of it, not, you know, it's a highlight. It already happened. When it's happening, you're like, oh, that's really cool. It worked out, because if that's your team, right?
Sure.
But your better sense of judgment as you watch it going, that's not going to work in the NFL.
No, it's not. It's like watching a running back that keeps wanting to run to the sidelines.
Well,
yeah, it might work. Might work in this conference. Not going to work in the league.
Not going to work because you can't outrun the speed in the NFL. And that's
Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
Fast as you, or maybe faster. So
yeah. So I mean, I'd watch and I'll give you credit. You said very early on with Williams that, listen, unless somebody gets a hold of him and can coach that out of him, he's going to struggle. And this year he's had a few bright moments here and there, but not enough. I mean, a lot of bad play in there.
Until I see it, Emil, it's still a game that's won in the pocket. Yes, you can escape here or there. You're better off escaping the pocket to find someone down the field. And Emil, what do I always say?
The ball travels faster than your feet.
Ball moves faster than your legs, man. And so that's really got to be the key.
His problem is, you know, not to break down quarterbacks, but the truth of it is, it's instinctual to him at this point. So
it's just how he's always played the game.
It's his first instinct. It seems he goes, if his first read isn't there, maybe he gets the second one, but not necessarily. He never gets to number 3. I mean, in other words, it's like 1.5. I'm out of here.
Yeah, let me run around with this thing and wait to buy open and try to stiff arm people. And no, that's not it, man. Sometimes a lot of times you just got to make that boring play, throw a ball in the ground. I'm not saying to dive and take a sack like maybe Peyton Manning would. Maybe not at this point in your career. Maybe 5-10 years from now you do that. But just
wait, who was it in the NFL? Was it Rodgers or Brady that when the play got called, if they didn't like what they immediately saw, they just spiked the ball?
Rodgers.
Yeah.
Rodgers. He whizzed the ball out of bounds. You know, give me another play.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to work. All right, that's it for us. You've got our 3 NFL picks from each one of us, and we picked both of these Final 4 college football playoff games. Enjoy them, folks. Enjoy the football-filled weekend. And if we haven't had a chance to say it to you yet, Happy New Year. We hope 2025 brings you lots of luck, because we know you guys are going to still put in those parlays. All right, that's it for us. For Emil Calamino, I'm Chad Wilson. Thanks for watching and listening to the Two Chumps Football Podcast. We'll talk to you guys next.